It's taken 3 Olympic Games, 1 silver and 2 bronze, but finally, Jessica Fox has her gold. At the end, exultation and tears.
Tears of joy, relief, I think just pride as well.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And all I can say is thank heavens for the Olympics, which is giving the nation and the media a welcome distraction from the pandemic. And with so many golden moments, there's plenty for the papers to celebrate.
Eureka!
Triple treat!
1 golden hour.
Or as Kelly McEwen put it after her gold medal victory.
Yeah?
And after one look at the TV ratings, I wouldn't be surprised if 7 executives are saying the same thing, with 7 pulling in massive numbers every night. And with Greater Sydney stuck at home in lockdown, 7's also enjoying record streaming numbers, turbocharged by Tokyo's favourable time zone. But for the networks who did not shell out millions to buy the Olympic rights, covering the Games is far less glorious. And with Tokyo under a COVID state of emergency, these Games are proving to be a very strange affair, as Nine's Damien Ryan explained on day 2.
It feels empty. It feels just like this street, and it's so weird. We're at being non-rights holders, we're outside the fence watching the opening ceremony, and normally you'd look at the screen and you'd see the cauldron be lit and you'd just wait for the roar. They might have had the sound effects on television, but there was no sound effects there. The only sound effects at the stadium the other night was the protesters who just did not let up.
Those COVID restrictions have also made access to Olympic heroes even more difficult than usual, as the ABC's national sport editor, David Mark, explained.
Normally for non-rights holders, they will do all their commitments for the rights holders, and then they'll go somewhere outside the Olympic zones and hold a press conference. They're known as grassy knolls in the industry. That's not happening this time. So that's the biggest problem for us, that we can't get to interview the Australian athletes after they've competed.
In most other sporting events, the media can show footage under fair use provisions of copyright law. But the Olympics have much stricter rules, with TV networks limited to just 6 minutes per day, or 2 minutes in 3 programmes. And that's why you keep seeing still shots of gold medal winners. But the restrictions have produced some creative coverage, like this animation on the Nine sites showing Ariarne Titmus storm through the field to snatch gold in the 200 metres freestyle. Inspired perhaps by this effort from the New York Times. Not quite like seeing it live. But what all networks can show is live reaction, which is why you've been seeing a lot of this. From Aussie school kids watching Ariarne Titmus win gold in the freestyle, to Kelly McEwen win the backstroke, and Zach Stubblety-Cook win in the breaststroke. For every gold medal race, there was a happy crowd on hand to give networks other than 7 something to cheer about, like this Canberra bar watching the rowing. And note how 10 has carefully blurred the TV screen showing 7's footage. Amazing. Just a pity spectators in Tokyo can't cheer on the athletes in the same way. But for that, of course, we can blame the pandemic. Which brings us to our show 2 weeks ago, in which we called out Alan Jones and Craig Kelly MP for the crazy claim on Sky News that getting a COVID jab makes you more likely to die from the disease. It was mad and dangerous stuff, and even Sky admitted it was wrong and forced Alan Jones to read a correction on air.
The broadcast didn't point out the higher rate of cases of the Delta variant in the unvaccinated compared with the vaccinated. Sky News Australia would like to correct the statements in the broadcast, which has been removed from all platforms.
It was hardly a heartfelt apology from Jones, and Craig Kelly was even less inclined to admit his error, accusing us first of a shocking smear, then telling his Twitter followers we were guilty of deceit.
Notice how the ABC blur the numbers so no one can see them. That's because the calculations are correct, but that spoils their story.
And after that, Kelly went back to spreading his falsehoods, tweeting that recent Israeli COVID numbers prove the Pfizer vaccine is worthless and doing nothing to prevent infections or deaths. In a series of tweets, Kelly hammered this message home.
With the latest data out of Israel, it should be game over for the vaccine sellers and the moronic stupidity of those pushing vaccine passports. Bombshell. Latest data from Israel exposes Pfizer farce.
So, is this right? Well, no, it's not, as a host of experts, including Israel's Ministry of Health, have confirmed. But there is a story in the numbers. Israel spent big to get the Pfizer vaccine and was the first to immunise its adult population. And that, with lockdown, helped get new cases close to zero. But in June, the country threw off its final COVID restrictions, and the Delta variant has since produced a surge in new infections. And that has led anti-COVID vaxxers around the world, including Kelly, to claim the vaccines don't work, as the Washington Post and others have reported.
A vaccine sceptic community that often focuses on unverified data, innuendo and false and misleading comparisons is suddenly pointing to Israel again. The reason? The country is suddenly seeing an uptick in cases, and most of them are among vaccinated people.
Most of the people now testing positive in Israel have indeed been vaccinated, but that is because hardly anyone in the population has not. And the Pfizer vaccine is still working. But Israel's Ministry of Health has warned its effectiveness in preventing infection and symptomatic disease is fading. Last month, Israel said the Pfizer jab's effectiveness had dropped from 95% or almost total protection to 64%. And recent case numbers show it may have fallen further to around 40%. And when you drill into the data, you can see why. This table shows that groups who had the vaccine back in January are getting much less protection against infection than those who got the jab in February, March or April, which is why Israel is now planning to give booster shots. But, crucially, protection against hospitalisation and severe illness remains high across all groups, with Israel's Ministry of Health making it clear last week that
the effectiveness of the vaccine in preventing hospitalisations and severe symptoms stands at 88% and 91% respectively.
That, of course, is what we need the vaccine to do. And that's why Professor Bruce Thompson from Swinburne University did not mince his words about Craig Kelly's claim the vaccine is useless, telling Media Watch,
even if the vaccine is becoming less effective in preventing infections, it is still really high in terms of preventing serious illness and hospitalisation, and in that nothing has changed. What Kelly is saying about it being worthless is absolute rubbish, and it's dangerous.
And the fact-checkers at Twitter clearly reached the same conclusion, because on 22nd of July, Kelly's account was frozen for a week, and the MP jumped onto another social media platform to tell his followers,
my Twitter account was also shut down hours after I posted data showing Pfizer was completely useless in Israel at preventing COVID infections. So I'm back up and running on Telegram, uncensored. Please share posts as widely as we are in an information war and the government and the media are hiding the truth.
Kelly's claim of a conspiracy goes down well with his supporters, who believe the mainstream media is lying to them. But if anyone is hiding the truth in his crusade against masks, lockdowns and vaccines, it is Kelly. Back in April, he was banned from Facebook for spreading COVID misinformation to his 100,000 followers, at which time he had one of the highest profiles of any Australian politician, apart from Pauline Hanson. He then took to Twitter to spread his message, and his posts there, analysed for Media Watch by Dr Tim Graham at QUT, show an alarming pattern. 202 of his posts since late last year, liked more than 57,000 times, target the Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccines. And around 90% of those suggest the vaccines don't work or spread fear, doubt and uncertainty about the risks, which leads Tim Graham to conclude,
it is overwhelmingly evident that Kelly is on a mission to spread primarily fear and doubt about the vaccine's side effects and to question their efficacy.
Kelly has spread his misinformation about COVID vaccines and treatments in full public view. Yet he has still been warmly welcomed onto Sky News opinion shows, appearing at least once a week over the last 3 months. He went on Chris Kenny to cast doubt on the efficacy of the vaccine, on Outsiders to push ivermectin as a treatment or a cure, and onto Chris Smith to do the same. And he's been a treasured guest on Corey Bernardi's show on 3 occasions.
Craig Kelly has been attacked for using science and data rather than emotion to frame his arguments. And most importantly, he's been right.
But it's Alan Jones who has boosted Kelly most, getting him on 6 times since May to peddle his anti-lockdown, anti-vaccine message.
There are thousands and thousands of breakthrough cases where people have supposedly been fully vaccinated and yet are still catching the virus, still ending up in hospital and still unfortunately dying.
And Jones has treated Kelly like a modern-day prophet.
Look, we're lucky to have you, Craig Kelly. We're lucky to have you. Thank you for continuing to fight. You're an inspiration to many of us. You keep going for one simple reason. The evidence says that you are right. Good to talk to you, a man of deep and significant courage. Craig, thank you for your courage and thank you for your scholarship. This bloke's courageous and he is correct. Outstanding. And we'll keep talking about it. You'll hear the truth here. This is not Alan Jones or Craig Kelly. There are the facts.
After our programme 2 weeks ago, Jones's latest interview with Kelly was taken down. And after criticism from Media Watch and Ray Hadley, Jones was told last week he will no longer be writing his weekly column for the Daily Telegraph. And now YouTube has gone one step further and removed a number of Sky's videos, although it won't say which ones, and banned the network from uploading new videos for 7 days for spreading COVID misinformation. In a statement, YouTube said,
"We don't allow content that denies the existence of COVID-19 or that encourages people to use hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin to treat or prevent the virus. We do allow for videos that have sufficient countervailing context, which the violative videos did not provide."
Sky News has claimed on Twitter that it is a disturbing attack on the ability to think freely. And tonight, Chris Kenny returned fire on his show.
So this is a foreign-owned multinational giant censoring the news and views that Australians can see. Quite extraordinary.
And we asked Sky if it would now follow Facebook, Twitter and YouTube's example and suspend Kelly's misinformation from the network, but they ducked the question. However, Kelly has told us he is not an anti-vaxxer, that COVID vaccines are not proven to be safe and that free debate should be allowed.
We are living in an environment of censorship and cancel culture, where any dissenting expert medical opinion, dissenting from the current government narrative, is being censored and crushed.
You can read his full 5-page response on our website. In the meantime, Kelly remains a hero to his many followers. Here he is phoning into Brisbane's anti-lockdown protest 9 days ago and urging them to oppose vaccine passports.
We can do this. We have the evidence, we have the data, we have the science, and we have the facts all on our side.
In that famous phrase of Trump's advisor Kellyanne Conway, those might better be called alternative facts. And now, let's go to a sport that's trying hard to polish up its image with a media campaign.
Greyhound racing resurgence backed by regional investment.
Multiple Greyhound track upgrades renew focus on animal welfare.
Stories of our industry's people show love, hope and passion.
If you're into greyhound racing, then the past month has offered up some scintillating stories in newspapers belonging to Australian Community Media, or ACM. And it's not just track upgrades making headlines. There's also heartfelt personal stories.
Short-term greyhound fostering adopted for lockdowns.
And if you're wondering about the joys of having a greyhound at home, well, they've got that covered too.
Bolstering mental health. Best supporting role goes to Oscar the Greyhound.
Yes, Oscar is a fantastic listener. And that's good because reading all the positive greyhound stories in ACM titles will take some time. Most of the 12 articles have been syndicated across almost 70 of ACM's New South Wales mastheads. But remarkably, they're not written by hard-working journalists, they're straight from the doggie's mouth. That being the PR man for Greyhound Racing New South Wales, Michael Cowley, or the doggie's CEO, Tony Mestroff. And is that disclosed? Yes, it is, with all stories labelled with this disclaimer.
This article was produced as part of an ACM partnership with Greyhound Racing New South Wales.
So, imagine how pleased and surprised we were to see some real greyhound news popping up on the other side of the country in ACM's Bustleton Dunsborough Mail.
Bustleton Greyhound Awareness calls for an end to greyhound racing in Western Australia.
That story by the paper's Emma Kirk about a state petition to ban greyhound racing was published in 6 of ACM's WA titles. But what do you know? Almost as soon as it appeared, it disappeared from all those titles, leaving only traces on media monitoring sites of its previous existence. And in early July, we found out why.
Australian Community Media confirms it pulled story on 11,500 signature greyhound racing petition.
And why was it pulled? Well, not because the story lacked news value, because the greyhound petition was covered by ABC Radio and Perth's 10 News.
More than 11,000 people are calling on the state government to ban greyhound racing. The petition was organised by the Free the Hounds group, who gathered on the steps of Parliament today.
And it had also been news on breakfast at 6PR.
Free the Hounds President Alana Christensen says the number of signatures on the petition demonstrates a growing community opposition to greyhound racing.
ACM's Emma Kirk also had a local angle for her story, because one of the groups collecting signatures was Bustleton Greyhound Awareness. So, why on earth was her story spiked? Writing in her Greyhound newsletter, Long Snouts, independent journalist Matilda Duncan had the inside track from reporter Kirk on what went down.
I had it all ready to go. I had the story all ready to print. I've done heaps of stories with the group in the past. It's a bit disappointing because we were told that we can't do anything with them anymore.
So, a ban on reports from the local Greyhound welfare group, according to Emma Kirk, who added this pungent comment.
It was really weird because you don't often hear from management that you can't publish a story on a particular topic or anything. It was a bit off guard.
So if these allegations are true, why would this happen? Well, ACM doesn't just have a deal with Greyhound Racing New South Wales. Its Mandurah Mail has also sponsored races in WA for years. So, was Kirk's story pulled to protect those commercial deals? ACM told us, no, the story was just held back because it needed more work.
This was purely an editorial decision. No complaint was made and no commercial considerations were involved. To suggest otherwise is wrong and, quite frankly, offensive. Media Watch is barking up the wrong tree.
Woof, woof. That's all from us tonight. There's more on our website, including statements from ACM, Sky News and Craig Kelly, plus a statement on COVID vaccine effectiveness, countering Kelly's claims, from one of Australia's leading experts, Associate Professor Paul Griffin from the University of Queensland. And don't forget, Media Bites every Thursday online. But for now, until next week, goodbye.